Dear Salma, my dear real life, the floor is yours.
Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum and namaste. Today, a very warm welcome to everyone joining us today. It's a great honor to host the mentorship session organized by Women in Ascension under the 1 Million Leadership Program and the Skills Development Batch. Women Ascension is a growing platform committed to empowering women through education, leadership, and practical skills development. Through its initiative, it is enabling women to build confidence, strengthen professional skills, and prepare themselves to lead meaningful change in their communities and workplace. I am Salma Noman, and I'm honored to serve as a moderator for today's session. I'm an educator and actively involved in academic development and leadership initiatives. Being part of this session under the 1 Million Leadership Program, it is a valuable opportunity for me to contribute to a platform that promotes inclusive education, professional growth, and women's empowerment. It is truly a privilege to facilitate today's discussion and to engage with such a diverse and inspiring audience. Today, I started with few words: Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, and hello. Why I use these words? Because the bias-free classroom from control to curiosity. This is a very important topic. This topic addresses one of the most critical challenges in modern education, how unconscious bias influences students' participation, classroom relationships, and overall outcomes. By discussing bias-free teaching practices, we are not only improving classroom environments, but also contributing to the broader goals set by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals SDG 4, quality education SDG 5, gender equality SDG 10, reduce inequalities. We are privileged to be joined today by our mentor, Amanda Adams, as educator with over than 25 years of experience in general education, English learner instructions, instructional coaching, and blended, as well as virtual learning environment. Currently serving as a professional development and virtual learning coordinator, Amanda's work focuses on fostering reflective teaching practices, collaborative personal professional cultures, and innovation in classroom through a strong growth mindset approach. Her dedication to mentoring educators and promoting inclusive learning environments makes her the perfect guide for today's important discussion. Without further delay, I would like to invite our respected mentor, Amanda, to lead us through the session today. Amanda, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. I am so excited to be here with everyone today. And no matter where you are coming in from the world, we are going to share this space for the next hour to an hour and a half. And we will be able to explore some pretty important topics together. So just a little bit about me, aside from I'll do a recap, I guess, of what our dear moderator shared. But just really, I've been in education a really long time. I've moved from, I think she said 25 years. I've moved into the third decade. So I have quite a variety of experiences coming with me to today's session that I hope to share with you. I'm really passionate about learning and about learners and about sharing that craft with my fellow educators. I am a Fulbright Fellow. I'm also an English language specialist, among many other things along my pathway. But my philosophy is learners first, always. So this is the phrase that grounds me, keeps me focused on the prize. And for me, the prize is the shared relationships that we have through the learning process. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with just a couple of norms for today. I want you to have the opportunity to invest in yourself. You're here. You've logged in, you're ready for some time together. So however long your internet lasts, however long you're able to connect is wonderful. That time is time that you have invested into yourself and exponentially, in turn, are investing in all of the people you encounter, your students, their families, your colleagues, and so much more. also investing in others. So those of us who are here in this session, we're sharing this space together today. This chat box and our emojis are our lifeline. They are our opportunity to share our ideas and questions, because if you have a question, everyone in this space can benefit from that question. So you sharing your ideas and your thoughts certainly impacts all the learners in this group, and that is investment in others. And so feel free to use emojis like crazy and to post in the chat any questions and ideas that you've got along the way. And then of course, we'll always be able to pause and unmute as we need. And then I know that there's going to be a question session at the end, but you don't need to wait. You're welcome to integrate those questions into the moment into which they occur. And then finally, the last norm, just take what you need. We have quite a few ideas that we're going to cover today, but I wanted to just remind you that any one or two small pieces might make a huge difference for you and your students in your classrooms and in your learning spaces. So I encourage you to, sort of see it as a menu or a buffet or a table full of presents, and a place that you can pick and choose the things that work for you in your world. And I am so excited about this topic because it really is student-centered learning, and the continual reflection on my part offer me a ton of joy as I watch my students blossom in rooms and spaces where they can express themselves. So welcome to everyone, and let's get going. Okay, we're going to start with what's called a waterfall. If you've done a session with me before, you might have done this kind of activity. So a waterfall, if you're not familiar with that English word off the top of your head, it's where water falls from very high space right down below, and it trickles, right? As you see in the image here, you've got some stair steps that it kind of moves down, right? So this is when I'm going to ask a question, and you're going to put your answer in the chat if you're able to. But you're not going to hit enter. You're not going to let us see that answer until I say 1, 2, 3, waterfall. And when I say waterfall, it's your opportunity to hit enter and let that answer come in the chat. And what we'll see is a waterfall of answers that come up, and everybody's answers fall similarly together so that we see a sort of cascade. And it's really it's fun, and it offers you the opportunity to see other people's answers in a very collected way. It's a tool that we can use not only in Zoom, but in the face-to-face classroom as well, where we have students write something and hold it up. Same idea. All right, so let's do a practice round. So I'm going to have you put your name and location. In fact, we could just do location if you want, or whatever's easiest for you. So name and location in the chat, but don't hit enter. Just wait. Give everybody a chance to type. Give everybody a moment. And I see some faces in some names in this course that are, in our session that I recognize from previous sessions, and it's so nice to see you back. All right, so name and location typed in the chat. Are we ready? Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, waterfall. Perfect. I see them coming in. Pakistan, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Afghanistan, Malaysia, Zimbabwe. This is the best. I love it. Hello to everyone. You guys are pros at this. This is perfect. Oh, I love it. So many from Pakistan too. To my friends in Pakistan who I saw about a year ago when I was there. It's wonderful to see names coming up. Nigeria, these are amazing. Welcome to everyone. Beautiful. So you understand how it works. Waterfalls are super fun, super interesting, but now you have a sense of who's in the room with us today, and which is a wonderful place to be. So we're going to do our next one. Do it just the same. I'm going to ask the question, and these questions are going to begin to move into our topics for today. So the next question is, what is your go-to, your favorite attention-getting phrase? You're in a classroom or in a group of people, a meeting. How do you get their attention? You could put quotes if you want. So for example, my attention getting phrase is, hello friends, or attention friends, something like that. Depending on who I'm working with. If it's my colleagues, I use friends. If it's my students, I say hello learners or attention learners, something like this. What's your phrase? But don't hit enter yet. Just wait a moment. Nope, you gotta wait. Are you ready now? 1, 2, 3, waterfall. Now put it in. There you go. Let's do our job. I love the inclusive language. Hello, everyone. Hi, beautiful. Attention, everyone. What I'm seeing here is no judgment on gender. I'm seeing things similar to using we and our. These phrases are fantastic. Hey, good people, the assumption that everyone has good intentions. That's great. Dear friends. These are great examples. So the idea that when we think about our go-to phrase, how do we get people's attention? That's a great simple way for us to say to ourselves, are we using any kind of bias? Are we using any kind of phrasing that calls out differences between us? So it's a really interesting way for us to start our conversation. Hola, hello, all of these things, and using everyone, things like that, it keeps people together. Our job, our work, we, those kinds of words that don't differentiate between us, but rather bring us together. So fantastic, everyone. We're going to do one more waterfall. So when I show the question in a second, go ahead and type it in, but don't hit enter until I say waterfall. So here we go. The question is, what % of your lessons are teacher-centered? Meaning the teacher is talking, the teacher is giving directions, the teacher is doing discipline. So this is a %. So it's just going to be like a number and a %. It's just a guess. But when you think about the most recent lesson you taught, what % of it perhaps? But remember, we're going to wait until I say waterfall. So think it over for a second. Think it over. Hello to everyone. 3, 2, 1, waterfall. All right. Got it. Very interesting. Somewhere 70, somewhere 80, some 50, some 10. So you can see here this beginning reflection of how much of our time has been spent where the students are doing the work or where we're doing the work. So these questions are intended just to kind of raise our awareness on the topics that we are going to have today. You get a sense of kind of where you're thinking about as we go through. All right, let's go ahead. Okay, first topics first. Understanding bias and its effect on the learning environment. So let's talk just a little bit here about, I want to share just a short story with you. So I moved to Alaska. So if you don't know, if you're not familiar with where I live in the north. I live in the state of Alaska in the United States. So I live in the very far north. In case you're wondering, for those of you who live around the equator of this that are attending this morning, there is still a lot of snow on the ground where I live, and I mean a lot. So if you're wondering what it's like to live in Alaska in March, it is still cold and has snow. But yesterday was warm, the warmest day we've had yet, so that was exciting. When I moved to Alaska, and I taught and visited small villages of Indigenous Alaskan people. And there was so much that I had to learn, right? We all have to learn every time we're in a new context. But one of the things that I had to learn about Indigenous Alaskan cultures, and it depends on the culture, right? There's many different regional groups, but in the far north and towards the Bering Sea, there are several groups of Indigenous Alaskans that often use their facial expressions to answer yes or no, but they don't verbalize it in a way that I was initially used to. I had to learn to pick up on nonverbal cues. So I had a student, I'm going to take my glasses off for this one. I had I was talking with a student and I was asking her a question and I was like, do you want to go outside? And she moved her eyebrows. And I thought I was waiting for an answer. I didn't understand. And I was like, so do you want to go outside? And she's like, I don't know if you can see my eyebrows moving. She was moving her eyebrows. And I was like, do you want to stay inside? She moved her face like this. And I didn't understand what was happening. So it took me a very short amount of time to realize that in many indigenous Alaskan cultures, people use the eyebrow raise as to answer yes. And they use the nose crinkle as to answer no. It didn't take me long to figure out that I needed to watch facial expressions rather than rely on audio cues to find the answer that a student was giving to a question. So I wanted to share that story with you because it brings us into that understanding of our own biases and how that can affect learning environment. If I'm going to build a relationship with those kids, I need to understand the perspective they're coming from. They don't need to come to me necessarily. We're going to meet in the middle somewhere. So it was a beautiful opportunity for me to learn this idea that there's so much more than words. All right, so with that, 2 ideas here, you guys, that we intentionally want to learn about the cultures of our audience, whoever our audience is, whether it's, young students, colleagues from different regions, from different countries, languages, religions, all the things. So this on the left over here, this active participation, active observation, watching for responses and reactions, looking for nonverbal cues and engagement levels that help you get feedback. They help you know whether or not you are getting through to that student. So it could be hand gestures, it could be facial head tilts, it could be all kinds of physical pieces that you might not have anticipated originally. So you guys can feel free to give me thumbs up as you go, as you're getting the ideas. And if making sure that you're watching for nonverbal cues is one of the key strategies that we take with us as we go through. The second one, thank you so much for those thumbs ups. Perfect. The other one that I wanted to share here at the very beginning is that respectful communication piece. And it sounds easy, right? We're going to be respectful. One of the things that we do differently in almost every culture is some level of sarcasm or humor, teasing. We might have labels that we use. These are things that might be common to one culture, but not another. So making sure that we avoid the use of humor that is at the expense of someone else or that might not be easy to learn or understand if they don't have language proficiency. So making sure that we choose not to use perhaps jokes unless we know that the student will be able to understand and interpret accordingly. And also making sure that we try to avoid label use. So if a specific group of students, it's very common in education to talk about students as being advanced or being low. We have determined then by using those kinds of phrases that the student can or cannot do something. And that's an example of us making the decision for them versus saying, if the student is what we might say is low, simply we need to change our strategies to use with that student. So it's not a blame thing, it's a shift in our thinking of trying to avoid the use of labels, avoid sarcasm, avoid teasing until you have an inclusive environment free of those 2 things. So looking for cues and perhaps dropping some of the things we might habitually use to avoid stereotyping. All right, this is a really interesting diagnostic tool, a tool for us to use. So take a moment to look around what you see on the screen here, and then I'm going to go over it. So just 1 second. Okay. So this is what we call the Johari window. It was by a researcher who many years ago came up with the idea that there are things that I'm going to start up in the upper left, that is open. We know about ourselves. We know about the students. They know about us. Very clear, right? I speak English. You speak English. That is something that we share. That is an open fact. There we go. There can be other things that go along with that. Some examples here, explicit norms, and I'm going to share these slides just as a side note in case you are interested in them. Explicit classroom norms, your learning goals, expectations, those are all things that are communicated very directly. We do this on purpose. But then we move down to this bottom area here. Sometimes there are things that we know as teachers, but the students don't know. It could be frustrations or things that we have going on in our personal lives that we don't share in a classroom setting. So there are things that the teacher knows, but the students don't know. But there's also in this bottom corner over here, some things that neither the students or the teachers know. It's undiscovered yet, right? You're going to discover it together as you go through. But it's this yellow box that I want to focus on right now. This idea that we as teachers, educators, have a blind spot. There are things that the students know about us that we don't realize. Like, for example, unconscious favoritism. When you're in a room, in a class of students, where do you typically stand? Who do you stand near to? Does it change? Is it the same? When you ask for answers to questions, who do you call on? Does it move around to different people and you keep track and make sure you ask everyone? Or do you always ask the same few? These are unconscious favoritism things that we do as teachers that we often don't realize. So we can open that blind spot up and begin to learn about ourselves by tracking, for example, making sure that we know that we've called on everyone in the classroom and that we move around the room appropriately, and that wherever we are presenting from, that we are including everyone in our view intentionally. We can also make sure that we try to avoid misinterpretations of cultural pieces, like the eyebrow raising. I didn't realize I was misinterpreting that the student was maybe being defiant and not communicative, but that wasn't the case at all. This was a blind spot for me that I needed to learn. So we can use this intentional search for our blind spots by very specifically seeing who we're calling on, where we're standing, who we're presenting to, and specifically using those cues, both verbal and nonverbal, of our students. So, one final thing I wanted to bring up in this particular part. We want to watch for conflicting language habits. If the learning is the stated goal, that's what we're there to do, but we center our classroom discussion around grades. Is learning and grades the same thing? So I ask you to take a look at this. In the chat, we're going to do a waterfall. Don't hit enter yet. Which example fits? Which one puts learning at the center and grades out of the center? Which one of these answers, A or B, focuses on learning? Put your answer in the chat box. And then 1, 2, 3, waterfall. What do you think? A. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. If learning is the stated goal, then our feedback to the student is not, this is 100%. That's a value. That's not a gain, an acquisition, right? That tells them whether they did it right or wrong. It's a judgment. Versus this is a clear demonstration of the skill that puts the ownership back to the student. The student was able to demonstrate that learned skill. They gained that. They get to own that. If we award it 100%, then we have judged it so. Now, this can be really hard in an educational situation because our education systems almost unanimously across the world are based in grades, which many see as the teacher giving to the student, not the student earning from their work. So there's often this sort of teacher at the center giving the student something. So when we change our language and partner with students, then it helps so much in the environment to focus the language where we want the attention, which is on the learning. So I'm going to take a moment here to think about a couple things. As you walk away, audit seat charts. Where are students sitting? Where are you standing? Cold calling, meaning who you're calling on in the class. Who do you call on? Using inclusive language for attention-getting routines. So, hello, everyone. Attention, everyone. Hello, learners. We are ready to do our work. And the last one here, implementing intentional wait time to accommodate diverse processing speeds. Indigenous Alaskan Native cultures, they have a slower speech pattern than many Western English speakers. And so it's a very important thing when I am teaching Indigenous students to make sure that I give them time to say it in the way that works for them. I need to not rush. Why am I rushing? So that is another piece that might affect students that you have all over the world, depending on the languages they speak, how much translation they're doing in their head, how much they're working on the concept. So wait time is another one. So lots of skills. I have a question for you now. Go ahead, and this does not have to be a waterfall. Think about your idea and put it in as you're ready. In what areas of your current practice do you feel bias might be difficult to see? When you think about all the things we do as educators, where might bias be hard for us to see? What do you think? I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. Where might it be difficult? And you can hit enter anytime you're ready. Where might it be hard to see bias? Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Lillian. Gender bias can be really subtle. It can be very, very subtle. I agree with you. That's definitely a good one. Yeah. What about, I was thinking about this one. I was thinking about sometimes my own habits, things that I've done as an educator my entire career. When giving a personal opinion, ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes we just let it go and we don't realize how much bias we might be portraying. Those are great answers. Oh, yeah, parents too. Where do parents fit into this? Such a good answer. Such a good thought. Yeah. Racial bias, 100%. Yeah, we often hear it come out in examples. We hear references. Absolutely. And it can be difficult because we don't always understand those perspectives ahead of time. Ooh, grade setting bias. Yes, that's a really interesting one, Fatima. Yeah. Sometimes it seems pretty arbitrary. We don't really know where the grades came from. So we could have a whole other session on grade assigning, on using rubrics and transparent learning objectives. We could do a whole other session on that one. Skin color. Yes, Salma. Absolutely. We don't really realize oftentimes the visual judgments that we make. 100%. These are great answers, everyone. Thank you so much for your ideas. So before we move into the next section, whether it's paying attention to where you're standing, using attention-getting inclusive language, changing language around grades, adding wait time, whether it's, let me go back here. Whether it is focusing on finding your blind spots, the things you don't know, whether it is looking for nonverbal cues. What do you think is the easiest thing, next step for you right now when you're thinking about bias? What would be a small, quick change you can make that you're thinking about from all the things I've shared so far? Yeah, Ramin, that's true. Grading bias. That's why we do a lot of times, what do you call it? Where you don't see the grade, anonymous grading, where you grade it without knowing who did it. Yeah. So real quick in the chat, what's one takeaway, one thing that you can do to work on your bias awareness? Before we move to the next section. One thing that you can do right now from the ideas we've talked about. Any ideas? What's one takeaway for you? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Does not need to be a waterfall. Acknowledging. Okay, Lillian. Lillian's like, I'm gonna look inside. I'm gonna look in me and see what things I've got going on. I like it. Taking some a personal approach. Excellent. Any other small steps, everybody? Wait time, attention getting, seating charts. Yeah. All right, Fatima, she's going to be looking for that engagement, including the students, Salma says. Yes, and we're about to shift to talking a lot about that. Learning for those biases. Yeah, thank you. Good question, good ideas. All right, let's keep going, everybody. All right. Yes, I think so too. Checking the participation. But we have to make sure we know what participation looks like, right? So making sure that that's inclusive for everybody. So great, yeah, great idea there. Perfect. All right, so part 2, everybody. Practices for student-centered. So many of you were talking about shifting things to the learner and using that to help make sure that you're avoiding bias. So they're very connected, right? Yes, thank you, Mahoba. Discussions we've had. Oh yeah, right. Yes, Ramin. Yeah. When you're open and say, I didn't mean to do something, and this is one of the things that I almost always do when I'm going to be working on a project with people long term, I always start with, I'm probably going to mess up. I'm probably going to unintentionally do something. Please tell me. Please let me know if it's inappropriate or I've missed some cue. So that's a fabulous one. So thank you for bringing that up. So bias and our ability to avoid that and to really balance our classrooms really comes into that student-centered learning piece. And so I want you to walk away with this phrase that's at the bottom here of the person doing the work is the person doing the learning. The person doing the work is the person doing the learning. And this is the guiding statement. This is actually a statement that I heard first from an author named, or an educational leader named Caitlin Tucker. She has done a ton of work around student-centered learning, and she uses this phrase all the time. The person doing the work is the person doing the learning. And when we think back to that percent of teacher-centeredness, if half of the time the students aren't doing the work, then maybe we missed something, right? So let's keep going. So when we're thinking about this mindset shift of who's doing the work, historically, the older way, the sort of like long-term over history and over time way that we did things was teacher-centered. It was driven by a sort of control. The teacher acts as the giver of knowledge, and the students rely on the teacher for everything. So that is historically been where the teacher is at the center, and the students are surrounding the teacher. In a student-centered classroom, This is much more, as you see here with the arrows going multiple directions. The teacher is still critical, 100% critical to this way of doing things. But it is driven by empathy for the learner, starting from the learner's perspective. And so we know, you and I know, that that learning design is a craft. What we do is true art. And so when we start with this process, we call it design thinking. And we're going to go into it in, much deeper in just a second. But I wanted to compare these two views because in a student-centered classroom, the students have some space to own. They have some needed contribution that they give. That's why the arrows go both directions. The student may seek feedback and also give feedback. The student may make choices and also be sometimes told they must do something. There's a balance between many pieces, and it becomes that integrated relationship. All right. So we talked about this at the beginning. When we're thinking about the voice, who's doing the talking? And we called it, who's doing the work? How teacher-centered is it? An example of this is like this, where it's 90% of the time. This is more of a traditional, maybe lecture-based scenario, right? Where the teacher is doing the bulk of the work and students are really actually only doing a small part. But that core principle where who's doing the work, that's who's doing the learning. So there's a little diagnostic down here at the bottom of, do my language habits conflict with my goals? Like we were talking about learning versus grades. What is it that we want to focus on? Seating charts and cold calling, is it the same kids? And then do we use that wait time? That is 3 ways that we can move from teacher-centered to student-centered. And that's just the beginning, but those are the 3 we've covered so far. So let's take a deeper look at this. So I'm gonna let you digest this for just a moment, and then we will just clean that up. All right. Teacher-centered, student-centered. When you're thinking about what it looks like, looking at the top part here, students are waiting for the teacher to start class. Students are in small groups reviewing their vocabulary at the beginning of class. So I'm asking you to think about this. How do you start your lessons? Let's start with that. How does a typical lesson that you teach start? Is it you or the students? Which one? So in the chat box, let's do just a quick waterfall. Put your answer in. Do you start the class with you talking or with students talking? Let's see which one we're starting with. Type in your answer. You just put teacher or student, whichever one starts your lesson. And we'll do 3, 2, 1, waterfall. It's a mix. Okay. Total mix. Some teachers, some students. Awesome. Often the students. Okay. Lots of you are pretty student-centered if you're starting your lesson with the kids. Teachers and students both. Okay. Okay. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, everyone. Perfect. Okay. So I love, by the way, how you're using waterfall so wonderfully. This gives you an opportunity to see what you're thinking, what other people are thinking. I love it. And you're doing such a great job at it. So starting your class every lesson with the students engaged in something means a couple of things. Oftentimes, the teacher can be free to greet students, connect with students, answer questions, if the class is already engaged in some activity, like for example here, reviewing their vocabulary. That allows the start of the class to be what we call a soft entry. A soft entry means that if a student is late, they had some complication, or there's a lot of questions from some homework or whatever, that the teacher can be freed up and the students are still deeply invested in what they're learning. So there's no loss, no time lost at all. When we look down these lists though, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the difference between the amount of time the teacher talks and the amount of time the students talk should be something at the front of your thinking as you are in the lesson, as you are designing the lesson. And I think that as you go through, you can be thinking about what that looks like for you. If it's really what the percentage you gave at the beginning of our session today, or if you're maybe thinking it's a little different, but it looks like from the chat, a lot of you are starting with the students, even just at the beginning of the class, which is such an easy, small change that can really shift the dynamic, shift the focus from the teacher to the students. Awesome. And yes, Salma, thank you for the reminder. Everyone, you are more than welcome to put any questions in the chat box or raise your hand, and I can and you can unmute and speak as well. So I apologize for going through so much. I have a very short time and so much to tell you, but I definitely would rather have your questions than not. So please put them in there. Okay. One quick thing. As I referred to this idea of design thinking and student-centered learning, shifting from lesson planning to learning design, designing that learning experience. And really, that's a language shift for you and I. That's a language shift for you and I to honor the art and the craft with which we do things. And it's also the truth. It's a historical bias that we are planning the lesson for the students, giving them everything, versus designing their learning experience. So Kamal Fatima says, let's see, in my university, everything like course research and assignments and stuff done by students, there are no teachers' guidance required. Oh, fascinating. So then you have a partnership with the students then, where you are giving them maybe feedback? I'll look forward to your answer. So instead of the teacher at the center, it's certainly the student at the center. That's awesome, Fatima. And that leads into this kind of idea that starting over here on the left-hand side with empathy, the understanding the humans as the learners and avoiding assumptions, watching for their responses. We start from their perspective. What do the students do best with? What do they need to focus on? What's important to the students? And then we begin this process as you move to the right here of defining the learning that we're going to do, ideating what that's going to look like in the classroom, and making sure that we are not having those assumptions. I see. Okay, so feedback can be super critical. We could do a whole session on feedback too. That's awesome. Also, Masa. Okay, perfect. That's very lucky. Most universities are not that far advanced unless you're up high in doctoral research, but down at the undergraduate level and even the master's level, it's not often that way. So that's pretty exciting for you. From ideating and setting that sort of goal of what needs to happen, we move into prototyping. So we try things out with students. So for example, at the beginning of this lesson, I empathized with the need of you as online learners in a session that's only a one-time session, very short, lots of information. What do you need from me? I wanted to make sure that you had a way to communicate quickly, and 100% of you had the opportunity to communicate. So I was prototyping with you this waterfall approach strategy as a way for us to have as many people as possible responding and getting engaged in the concepts. And so then you test it out, you create everything, and then you go back to that ideating. If something doesn't work, then we revisit and rework in a sort of circle here. So Ramin asked some great questions. Won't it make things difficult without any mentorship and guidance from the teacher? I mean, no teacher's guidance sounds good, but it seems kind of restrictive. Even the best of people need guidance or mentorship. So tell me if I'm wrong about the way that it was worded in there, but I think that, oh, I see it here below. But we're doing everything by ourselves. But this is difficult for us because sometimes we need guidance and we need some time. We're doing a difficult task and we later take out, because they take out the mistakes from our work. Okay. So Fatima and Ramin are coming around here with this. And Ramin, will you, or Ramin, Harun, will you tell me which of your two names is your name you prefer to go by? I want to make sure I say it correctly. So the interesting piece here is that there's a balance between the space that you give the students and the feedback and the support, the structure. And this is where that comes in. This is why I used the word architecture of learning design, architecture of design. You must give the students the support they need and the space to work. There's a balance between the two. You have to balance space and structure so that in some cases, the students have plenty of space to develop their research, develop their projects, but that they are continually checking in with the students and the teacher so that there are checkpoints and they're getting feedback, support, resources, help, correction, and all of that must fit in together. So it's a really important question there for sure. I love this conversation. Thank you so much. So this is called design planning. The idea here that, okay, perfect. I was right then. Yay, Ramin, perfect. I just didn't want to get it wrong. Sometimes I'm not sure. Different cultures have their family names and their personal first names in different orders. So just checking. Okay, so let's take a look here. There are a couple of things I want to share with you. First, the question formulation technique, QFT. This is the idea that we allow students to lead the questioning, the inquiry, by asking as many questions as possible, writing them exactly without any judgment, and then converting and then making those questions taking any statements, making them into questions, and then deepening and answering those questions. So using questions as a center of the work that we do with students helps them to find where they want to go. And it can be things they're wondering about, questions about assignments, topics that they're learning. It can be all kinds of things. But you can use QFT, and it's Googleable. You can just put that into the internet and find all the details on it. But it is the idea that we want students to ask questions. It's the art of asking questions and helping students find out how to ask good questions, making the statements into questions, making the questions go from yes, no to open-ended that they need to answer. So consider this idea, the use of questions, as a tool that you can use with students. And then additionally, co-creating classroom norms. So when you start something, you set those norms of what you expect students to be able to do and how they're going to contribute. And then making sure that you go from yes, no, to perhaps open stems, open sentence stems. An example of a stem would be, I am wondering about, ... I would like to know, ... I am confused about, ... So giving students the beginning of a sentence so that they can finish. so that you can get much more information from a yes, no. All right, I'm gonna jump into the chat. So Fatima was talking about, yeah, so how difficult that the research work can be sometimes. Your mentor or supervisor, you needed their guidance, 100%. Teachers and students need each other, right? Students need their teachers to be guides, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, I hope that it got done, Fatima. I hope that you were able to get that. I see a conversation going in here about AI, so I would like to address that really quickly. So Fatima says we are restricted on the use of AI assignments. Oh, so Shafiq said before there's AI now, we can ask for guidance, and Fatima says nope, we can't use that. And Shafiq says, well, not the whole thing, but you can get some guidance on it. And so there is a good, healthy debate happening around AI and around what is ethical and what is not ethical in the use of it. And I think the definition is going to continue to change over time. It already has changed in the last couple of years, and it's going to continue to adjust. But finding the balance between what is ours and what is not ours is a really hard thing for us to define right now. So those of you who are in doctoral studies right now, it can be a pretty hard place to be, but having feedback and then having it still be your work is from an AI source versus a personal physical source, right? A human. There's not a lot of difference if used in the right way. If you give the AI the rubric and you give or scoring guide or expectations, and then you give them the work and ask for comparison and judgment, it allows you to focus your work. You don't have to accept it or use the changes it makes, but you certainly can use the guidance that it gives. And there's a little bit of a difference there between taking guidance and asking for brainstorming versus the doing the work for you kind of scenario. And it's going in here. I can see the question continuing about real feedback versus the feedback that the mentor gives you. And here's the difference there. The AI can give you feedback centered around whatever you give it. It has only what you give it. So you give it the scoring guide, you give it your example, it can function with that. But the human, the mentor, they have a rich body of understanding regarding that thing. They're going to be able to take what the AI gave you and augment it or make it much deeper than it would be otherwise. So we definitely need both. As far as mechanical, not necessarily the AI, you can score something on a rubric, which is still mechanical, without using the AI, but it certainly has some pieces in there. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Last one here for the moment. Ramin says, this type of learning environment leaves me a lot more confused with questions and no definitive answer. I feel it can make that restrictive. Yeah. Let's see. With no proper two-way communication since you're stuck. So this is a great piece that you are observing as students that you need in your teachers, your mentors. And so making sure that you are modeling that for your students of offering actionable, good feedback opportunities to ask questions and get answers. So making sure that we incorporate these struggle points that we have as learners into our practices as educators is awesome. Salma, go ahead.
I have a question. That is the bias always give a negative impact, or sometimes it appears like in the form of positive expectations that still affect fairness?
That's a really good question. And I don't think that bias is inherently 100% a bad thing at all. It's an awareness thing. And you can tell the students 100%. I have very high expectations, and just be transparent. It is a bias that I have. But it's founded in love, and it's founded in belief. So for example, I do have very high expectations for my students, but it's because I believe that they are capable. So that is a bias that I have. I expect them to do good, thoughtful work. And when I say good, I mean by effort, putting in effort to do thoughtful work. And when they do that, and we work together to get their questions answered, and they learn so much more when they invest. And so, yes, I am transparent with my students that there are some biases that are good ones, and or expectations in a situation where it might be, I'm willing to work hard for them, so I have a bias towards them working hard for me also. So it's that partnership. So you ask a great question, Salma, that no, it's not always bad, but transparent communication around it is very important. All right, everybody, let's refocus here. So what is one element of your teaching that you would be willing to trade for more student curiosity? So think about this for a second. Right now, maybe you are in control over the pacing, the books you read, the essay assignments. Maybe you're in control as the educator of what resources are used, or what groups the students are in. What would be one thing you would be willing to give control away if it made the students more curious and more invested? This is going to be a waterfall, so don't type in, don't hit enter. Type your answer in, but wait for me. Think about it for a second. What is one piece of control you could give up, you would be okay with giving up, if the students were more invested? All right. 3, 2, 1. Waterfall. What is one thing you'd give up? The assumption that you're always right. Lillian, you're amazing. Yes. Time. I see. Yes. Thanks, Taffy. Thank you. Structured time frames. Give a little flexibility. I like it. It's an easy one. We can make a small shift there with no real detriment. Asking the learner about the topics. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. That was to the other one. Let's see. Giving them more diverse assignments. I love it. Yeah. Lots of ideas here. Perfect. So you recognize that sometimes there's something that we do that you could give to the students. Why do we do all of the work? If we're doing all of the work, the students are not getting the opportunity to learn as much as they can. Yeah, extending learning time. Yeah. Yep. Awesome. All right. So I put in here just a quick little deeper dive into that QFT cycle. Moving from yes/no questions to letting students lead that inquiry. So this is how it works, just so that I could just give you a little clarity on it. First idea, anytime that you're going to learn a new topic, having the students make as many questions as possible based on a prompt. You give them the prompt, like the topic, for example. But no judgment, no discussion, just get all those questions out there. If it's a historical event, for example, have they ever heard of it? Do they know what it is? Who was involved? All of the things. Then they can categorize those questions. Are they open questions? Mean they need an explanation? Or is it a yes/no question? And then turn all of those yes/no questions into open questions. So they become from just a question to a good question. Then strategizing the 3 most important questions. What are the 3 things they really want to know about? And then they begin to develop that action plan of how to get those answered. Then they reflect on the process. What did we learn and how did we learn it? So you can use a cycle like this with the students to engage their interest, bring them in, engage their interest, help them be a part of the question and answer cycle. All right. So Fatima says, I think they teach us through doing practically everything. Yeah, Masa says giving them time. Yes, time. That seems like a dominant feature in that discussion. Absolutely. Narrowing them to mere specific slides or print material for a course. Ooh, that's a really good point, Ramin. Sometimes you give them too much information. Authentic sources. Yeah, discussion to gain from each other. It is a good point about valuing the other learners in the classroom, right? And the other learners in the space. Yeah, don't make it the only thing, but open to it. I love it. Broadening those sources. That's a great idea. All right, we're going to dive into part 3 now. Safe spaces for learning. So I want to share with you just a small anecdote. It's called My Favorite Mistake. I have a colleague who I was interviewing about maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And she teaches 6th grade, which is about the age of like, I don't know, 11 years old, maybe 12, depending on the age of the student. And the students in her class, they had used a protocol called My Favorite Mistake. So in her class, she shared with me that she shared with the students from the first day of school every year that mistakes are a required part of learning, that we actually can't learn without making some mistakes. And in fact, the more mistakes that we make, the quicker that we are able to learn. And so in her class, mistakes were a valued part of her classroom. And that students at any time could be like, I have a favorite mistake. I want to show you my favorite mistake I've made today. And they would show her a mistake in a math problem or a sentence or whatever it was. And you know what they did by explaining to her why it was a mistake? They were demonstrating that they had learned something and they knew why it was wrong and all the things. So for her as the educator, she was able to see how much they had grown, and they were able as a student to recognize that because of that mistake, they learned something new. This is a really hard thing for many, many cultures. Many cultures, mistakes are something to be embarrassed about, to hide. It's something that we try to avoid. And I thought it was the first time in my life that I had come across a teacher, an educator, who just took that idea of hiding mistakes and put it to the side and began to encourage her students to make a mess out of learning, to really dive in and not be afraid to try. She made her learning environment risk-free, meaning that the students had all of the space to try new things. And it has always continued to inspire me ever since I had that interview with her, because in the different places that I have worked in the world, and throughout my career, mistakes are often not an accepted part of the learning process. But we can, as educators in our own small classroom space, take a small piece of that and say, find the mistake in this math problem. Like you show a math problem already created and the students have to find the mistake and explain it. You can begin to use what we might call a mistake or an error as a tool for learning. So I thought that was a pretty cool story she shared with me that day. One of the things that we can do as we are creating that space for learning is move from compliance to empowerment. So we can use a student-built scale of participation. So when I look at this level of engagement piece, And if anybody in here has had me in sessions before, you might have seen this at some point. This idea that we let the students determine how and what, how much they want to engage and what engagement looks like. So making a bigger version here, if we were to share with the students a chart that looks like this, and then ask the students to define or put examples of what is avoiding, what is participating, what is driving, then the students' conversation and awareness around what they expect of themselves and what they expect of their peers creates that mutual space, that shared space. They move from compliance, the rules that you give them, you will do this, you will do that, to the empowering them to set their expectations or norms together as a group. And then they help enforce each other as well, because then there is a communal expectation of what needs to be done. So I wanted to share this strategy with you as a way to make it an opportunity for students to, and you don't have to use it all the time, but it could be at a particular project or a particular topic. You can have them begin to put their pieces in there so that they know what it looks like. So Ramin says she also made their personalities strong, so they had a sense of not being afraid. Yes, a lot newer things. They weren't restricted. Yep. Yes. Okay. So aside from giving the students the space to determine how they're going to participate and encouraging that to be from their own perspective, there's also different levels of control or scaffolding that we can use to develop or instill that curiosity. So we can build confidence by what we might call a gradual release of responsibility. We might start with structure and then move into giving them a little more space, and then a little more space and a little more space. So you observe here that the students are holding on to the side, the teacher's giving guidance. Now the students are in the water, beginning to move, and this teacher is guiding. Now the students are in the pool, but the teacher's not. And now the students are going in their own directions. So the idea that we could use something like this to help the students have support. So this is what we were talking about before, where students weren't getting the feedback that they needed or giving too much space. This is an example of how you can support the students at different levels, depending on what they need as a class or as a person. You can start with the teacher selecting the topic and move toward the students selecting the topic. Teacher selecting the questions, students determining the questions, students making all the essential. You can move to the resources, and this is what Ramina was saying. She was saying, she had selected the resources before, but she would like the students select some of the resources with support. She's moving toward this deeper area. And then, students or teachers selecting the final product. So the idea that you can give the students some space. Earlier, we focused on time. We give them more time. How much time do they need for something? Having the students begin to learn how to estimate how much time they need for something is a skill. So you can support the students at different levels. And as I mentioned, this is that gradual release of responsibility. The idea going from I do something to we do it together, to doing it as a group, and to them doing it independently. Moving forward, transferring from the teacher effort to the student effort. It doesn't mean that you're not involved. It just means you're involved differently. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Shafiq, it definitely, having that recognition that students might need different pacing is a really good point. A really good point. So gradual release of responsibility, and you only give them as much as they're capable, over time, you can expand it, give them another piece, give them another piece. One of my favorite classes that I have taught was literature. And I started the class by offering a small selection. Choose from this small list. And then the next quarter, I opened it and said, okay, here's a bigger list. Choose, but choose with intention. Make sure you're making a choice for a reason. Then the third quarter, I offered the students a large list and they could add their own to the list. And then fourth quarter, the students chose their own. They always had to have a reason. We always had some criteria. I provided that structure, but it moved into the students selecting, and then their interest and investment was deeper. All right. You know, as a final thing, this is getting towards the very end of things here, of this presentation, but one of the things, I like this quote at the top here. It's by a researcher called John Hattie. Listening is the most underrated, overlooked skill in education. It doesn't happen by osmosis. It has to be taught. The idea that we don't often teach students how to listen. The idea that most classrooms are lecture-based, teacher-centered, but we haven't taught them how to listen. That's a difficult thing that leaves a gap between the practice and the student. And so taking a look at this concept here, that you can have the stages of listening that you actively talk about with students. Being, you were, yeah, I'll sign up, yes. She knows then. We gave more and more choice over time, for sure. So attending, being physically and mentally present, hearing what the words that were spoken, comprehending or understanding, then evaluating, and then how to respond. Yeah, okay. So the question is, can I, how best can I teach them to listen and understand? It's a great point. So I would have the students identify what each one of these looks like. So I would use something like, let me go back, something like this, but I would have the stages of learning, of listening, and you could have the students identify what each one of them looks like. So I am physically and mentally present. In my culture, making eye contact is important. So if I was teaching in the United States, I would encourage students to physically face me and make eye contact with me, if that was appropriate for their culture as well. But being physically in the space, facing the direction of the speaker, and using their body, right? Oh, totally, Fatima. You're so right. And then so I would do it that way. When you're thinking about how to teach students how to listen and understand, help the students use the words to articulate or say what it looks like and show you. And then that will help for sure. Especially the theoretical. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I still think it's in the delivery. I think the teacher can do a lot of things to make things less boring. All right, couple of ideas to wrap up this section. Using exit tickets as the students leave the classroom, having them submit an honest reflection. How did you learn today's material? 1, 2, 3, or 4. Then they will know. Normalizing errors by establishing mistake-friendly routine. And having self-selected stations. Letting students choose, I need more practice on this topic, or I'm ready for the next topic. Having students self-select their next activity is certainly it. All right, in the chat, go ahead. What is one idea that seems interesting to you? Whether it is developing questions, whether it's offering scaffolding of more space, whether it's normalizing errors, having students choose. What do you think? What's something that might be interesting for you to try? Yeah, let them ask more questions. Yes, Salma. I love it. Ask away. And not just any question, good questions. Not yes or no, but open questions that we have to dig into. So go ahead and put your ideas in the chat. What are something that you would like to try? We talked about a lot of different things. Scaffolding, letting them do the work by talking more. Yeah. Yes. We talked about educator bias. We talked about design thinking, mistake friendly. We talked about listening techniques, question formulation, inquiry, gradual release of responsibility. We talked about a lot today, everyone. I like this phrase at the bottom here. Empowerment is not a happy accident. It's the intersection of our intentions. The questions that make them curious. Yes, Shafiq, let them wonder, right? Let them dive in. Yes. So, talk time versus student time. Compliance versus engagement. Listening and welcoming errors. All good things. Blind spots, student inquiry, rewards for mistakes. So, as you've been already putting in there things that you're willing to give it a try. Making errors, yes. Asking questions. Can I suggest for you for your research work on time? Tell me more, Fatima. What do you mean? How to build a pace? How to build pacing? Ramin says normalizing mistakes. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff, everybody. Okay. That's all on my side. We can open it up. I'll let Salma take back over and open for questions if she wants. But I want to just say thank you so much for learning with me today. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Teaching Jedi if you would like to connect with me there. And so, Salma, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amanda. It was a wonderful experience with you. I learned a lot and engaged new things. A wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Amanda. It was great having you in the session. Everyone, is there any questions? You want to ask questions from Amanda? You can ask questions. You can open your mic. That was a wonderful session. I love a lot. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Yes, I'm so glad.
Everyone, you want to ask questions? You can ask questions to Amanda. Okay, Amanda, one thing I want to ask that have you ever experienced any bias in the class, and how did you work on that, and how did you engage your students in all these problems?
So when it comes to bias in the classroom, and I have worked in some particularly some classrooms that had a particularly deep level of bias related to race and ethnicity, and that's the one that comes to my mind anyway. And in that case, we did two very concrete things. First, we worked on finding our common ground. So we aligned on things that were similar across all of us, things that we all wanted and were interested in or were important to us. And we made a point of intentionally making it a class priority to value the differences in other people. So when one culture, for example, stereotype was known for perhaps some talent, we would embrace that talent and encourage other groups who had different talents that now they could share their talents together. And so we definitely put a priority on value the differences and finding common ground. So those were, and openly and transparently in a very, very student-driven way. what is something that you love about your skills? What is something that you can share with others? And those things were, when you allow people to be proud of their culture and proud of where they're from and proud of who they are and what they bring to the space, then it becomes quite a beautiful thing, and it becomes a respect base of things. So, yeah.
Thank you
Um,
so much, Amar. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Ask
I
us.
have a question to
Yes, please.
Miss Amanda Adams. Hi, Miss. I'm Dr. Shariza. Actually,
Nice to
this
meet
is
you.
not yeah, this is not my field, right? But I just curious.
Cool.
Okay. I'm not coming from one gender school. I'm
Mm-hmm.
coming from multiple races in Malaysia. Okay, my question is, when you set up the class, right, from the beginning of the learner, especially for the primary school, because later I will talking about, I will giving speech to the primary school. So that's why I just thinking about how you ensure when you choose a student, how there is no bias, especially related to races, related to
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, and related to society. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how we say it, whether it's rich, poor, or medium class, society class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
want to
economic.
from the beginning, right? Because you know, right? The children, they don't know anything in kindergarten. Okay,
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
move into the primary school, I don't know how your primary school, because you are outside of Malaysia. In my
Yeah.
primary school, there is last time when my age, no examination, no exam or no test to taking. It just
Mm-hmm.
um by the list of the from registration, right? But last right now, because my nephew also in the kindergarten, I know there is a test when you want to moving to the primary school, so that test will be um ensure that which class that you will going, which class,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, it's just like benchmark, you know. So
Yeah, sure.
how we want to make to ensure that there is no bias there.
So the interesting thing, I think, is that there is that humans generally come with bias. We have to work at not having bias. So when you have a selection of the students, there are systems that you could use that avoid bias, like lottery systems, where people put their names in and then the students are selected at random. So there's those kinds of things where you could use like a sort of randomized system that avoids bias. And when the students are already selected for the school and being divided into classes, then certainly there can be mostly relational based, that you definitely would want to make sure that the students are a good mix of everything: gender, relations, skill, socioeconomic, historical background, all of those pieces, so that together they can make a new community. The more differences they bring to the table, then the more that they find common ground together. And that creates that new space that avoids so when we think about bias as a selection that's happening, we should maybe perhaps focus on valuing diversity and valuing the differences between groups, so that you can have that as much mix, or what's the word I'm looking for? As much, I guess, diversity. I'll stick with that. As much diversity as possible within any group, so that those groups of students are, in essence, challenged to find that common space together. If everyone is different, then there's no way that they can use their biases to prefer themselves over someone else. Everyone is bringing their own, and then they find that common space together. I hope that's helpful, but definitely I would encourage diversity and awareness of avoiding bias for sure.
Yes, actually, I agree with you. It just we are human being, right? From my
Totally.
perspective, yeah, from my perspective, this is only discussion, okay? Everyone don't take this as a bias or anything. I'm not biased. It's just my conclusion here is, even though we try to make sure that there is no bias, but might be have 1% there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well,
So
humans.
it just yeah.
Humans.
So when I'm hearing you talking here, what I'm thinking is, we try to avoid, but there is still 1% because we are human. Society,
Yeah.
it might be related to the race, society, class, and
It's
also
really
the
about valuing good intentions. Like,
Mm,
I know for sure that I will have bias, but I must be aware, continue to, if I know better, I must do better. And making sure that I always have good intention. If I make a mistake culturally, I always try to make it better. I always try to not do it again. You know, like I
yeah,
learn from my
yeah.
mistakes. So
Yeah, this is what teachers, I think, problem, I think. By the way, nice talking to you.
nice
Very
talking
good.
to you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I already connected with you in LinkedIn. Okay.
Bye. So, let's see,
Thank you
Sisa
so much.
Senkosi?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Any question? Any more
Oh,
question? Anyone?
okay, yes, I wanted to ask, let's say I have given my student the chance to speak, and then only a few every time the same students are the ones that are actively participating, even if
Yeah.
after encouraging others to,
Yeah.
then how best can I avoid picking those ones that are more active, and the others you encourage them, but they are not even forth. So
Yeah,
I think
such a
that
good
way it
question.
can, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So maybe can I then engage them, or how to avoid bias?
Mm-hmm. So I would recommend, so fantastic question. I would recommend that you have multiple ways to participate that aren't necessarily audio in front of the whole group. So many, there's two structures that come to my mind on this. So using smaller groups where the student may not want to talk in front of 50 people, but they're okay talking with 5 people, or they're okay working directly with 10 people. And so using smaller groups helps a lot. Secondly, having more than one way to contribute the information. So maybe they can say it, they can write it, they can use a physical symbol like an agreement with a thumbs up. They can maybe participate in other directions. So maybe they are not always the facilitator, but maybe they are the timekeeper, or maybe they are the agenda person to keep them moving on the right track. So I think you can make sure that people have the opportunity to contribute, but not always in front of everyone in a whole group. I would recommend providing other opportunities that are smaller group. And I think you'll find that those introverted students will engage more in a smaller setting.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Yes, for sure. Well, I'm afraid, my friends, Miss Salma, I have to run. It's early in my day. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning here, but I have to get started with some meetings for my my normal teaching job, and so I must run. Is there anything that
Thank you
else
so
that
much.
we need before?
Thank you so much, Amanda. It was great having you today. And as we conclude today's session, we are reminded that the bias-free classroom is not created through policies alone. It is built through awareness, reflection, and a genuine commitment to equity and inclusion. On behalf of Women Ascension and the 1 Million Leadership Program, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Amanda Adams for sharing her valuables and her experience. And thank you so much, Amanda, for being here, for sharing your valuables, and you had shared your treasure with us. And thank you so much for being here. And I would like to thanks all my participants here who were actively engaged and thoughtful contribution throughout the sessions. Your active participations made this session more valuable and meaningful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in our next more sessions. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so
Bye
much.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Thank you so much,
Alaikum.
Miss Amanda.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye bye.